In this video, we talk about Voices in My Head by Unexpected Games. And I have to tell you, this publisher, they honor their name between the initiative and Voices in My Head. They have some of the most unusual games that I've seen in a while. The initiative, if you remember that game, it was Cooperative Wheel of Fortune, which the description may seem strange. Well, it is, but I like that very much. Voices in My Head is even stranger. The game is about this guy whose name is obviously Guy, and he's not, let's say, the brightest light bulb on the chandelier. Among other things, he committed a robbery, robbed a bank, and now he's on trial, and one player will play the role of the prosecutor, and that makes sense. So far, you're like, okay, it's like a legal thriller kind of thing. So one player will be the prosecutor, who is this awesome character, but the other players will play the role of voices in the guy's head, and these voices have different objectives. And here's the board. As you can see, it represents the guy's head, the guy's brain, the guy's mind, and there are these trays. And at the beginning of the game, you will assign, again, different roles to characters, and each role has unique objectives. The voice in the head going for justice, yes, wants Guy to face his responsibility and so to go to jail. The selfishness, however, wants a guy to get away with it. Undecided, doubt wants actually the jury to be undecided, and then there are other things. Depending on the number of players, you will have different such voices assigned to players at the beginning of the game, so that ensures a mix of different voices. And so it feels a little bit like Bang, in which, however, instead of being different characters in the Old West, your voices in Guy's head. So one player's role is not secret, though. The prosecutor, everybody knows who the prosecutor is. The other players, again, you see their card face down, and that will determine their objectives. So the objectives are based on what the jury is gonna think at the end of the game, which is at the end of the trial. So we're gonna have those jurors there. It's a simplified jury with 6 groups of 2, so it's not really 12 individual jurors, but that simplifies the game. But you see, they can be logical, judgmental, distracted, laid back, and so on and so forth. And game effects will place tokens there, such as let Guy didn't do it, or at least he's not guilty. Yeah, the game talks about innocent and guilty, but of course we know that, at least in the American legal system, is guilty or not guilty. So, Guy's not guilty. Wait a second, maybe Guy is guilty. And at the end of the game, if these tokens, there may be puzzle tokens here, they'll cancel each other out, so a guilty and non-guilty token are removed, and whatever is left at the end tells you what that group of jurors have decided about the case, which may be indeed totally undecided. And there are the tokens that will be placed face down in the various locations during the game. So some tokens are placed face up, so everybody knows what that is, and some are placed face down, and at the end of the game, these are revealed. And again, these mean nothing, means undecided, and these count as the other ones. And again, in this case, if this is the situation at the end of the game, these 2 jurors are undecided. And that's how you will, at the end of the game, check what the situation is, and you determine the winner or winners, because it's entirely possible that multiple players will win as long as multiple players have fulfilled the obligations or their objectives. And the objective of the prosecutor is always that more guilty tokens are placed on jurors, or there are more jurors that have a guilty token than there are jurors that have a non-guilty token. Now, so far, so good. The theme is a little strange, maybe, because playing voices in a person's head is not very usual, but the mechanics are also pretty unusual. Now, The prosecutor will have this screen here, and the prosecutor, each round has 3 cards to choose from. There are 8 rounds, and a card is selected every time. The first 4 rounds, the card will come out of this deck for the first phase of the trial, and the second and the last 4 rounds, the cards come out of this deck. The first phase represents witnesses being interrogated, and the second phase represents Guy taking the stand. Now, the prosecutor, again, has 3 cards to choose from, so they will choose what the active card for the current round is. And when they do so, they take the card, they put it in the middle behind the screen, and they slide it forward so that the card actually will peek out from the other side, and so that the jurors, the other players, the voices in the head, will see those 2 symbols. They represent the areas of Guy's brain that will be mainly involved in the current decisions. And from that, then players will take turn placing tokens on Guy's head. Each player has a set of 8 tokens that are marked as their own by the color and also by other symbols. So, for example, here we got Guy with the head, with the hat, and Guy's ready to go fish. Another player will have Guy ready to rock, representing again different aspects of the personality. So 8 tokens for 8 rounds. So each round, each player will place 1 token in Guy's mind. You see also other symbols and numbers here. In the basic game, you ignore them. You ignore the symbols. You only look at the numbers. You ignore the symbols. In the advanced game, those symbols will trigger different game effects. So I decided I am blue player that's my turn, yes, and I want to influence this part of Guy's brain. So there are 5 sections of Guy's brain, each represented by one of these trays, and I decided I want to influence the distinctive aspect of the brain. I place the token on the central platform, and then I take this other tool here, that's the only name I can think of it, and then I will slowly, and I keep it perpendicular to the board as much as I can, and once I touch the token, I cannot change direction or anything. Once I touch the token, I have to keep moving in the same direction towards the area that I selected, and I have to do it slowly. So yeah, I cannot do, but yeah, something like this. This apparently overcomplicated procedure is simply to ensure that tokens are moved slowly and without too much finicking onto the board. And so that's what happens then. And then the next player goes, and suppose that they decide to add a token to the same area, and that's how they do it. And then the prosecutor goes. The prosecutor also gets to place a token every turn. As you can see, their tokens have a 0 on it because their impact on Guy's mind is not as deep as, well, the voice is actually inside his head. And so the prosecutor still gets to place tokens to mess with his mind quite literally. And what the prosecutor can try to do is indeed to try to remove tokens from there. As opposed to the other players, they're not just trying to remove their opponent's tokens, but they're trying to keep them there. So if a token falls because it has been pushed out, then the token is removed from the board. But as you can see, that wouldn't be the case. So basically, after everybody has placed a token, remember the card that the prosecutor selected as the active card. Then the prosecutor announces what part of the brain is involved here, and in this case would be speech. And we see if anybody controls that part of the brain. Oh, look, somebody does control speech there. So the player that controls the part of the brain involved in the current card will make a decision. So in this case here, the prosecutor reads what the card is all about. The witness points directly at you That's the man I saw fumbling with a mask outside the bank. And basically the player who controls speech, that means the player with the highest total in that area, looking at the values of the tokens, makes a decision. And so as a prosecutor, I read out loud that you can choose, player who controls speech, to have guys say, hey, we had a deal, or to have guys say, stay quiet and plot your revenge. So the player who controls speech will make a decision, and this basically they have to guess what that will impact. They don't have access to that information. But again, you get a sense if you're trying to send the guy to jail, what will be more damning, or if you're trying to get a guy free, what will be more exculpating. So the player controlling that action makes a decision, and then the prosecutor reads aloud what the effect is, which will have different effects. There are strategy cards that will offer players different kinds of advantages. If you want, you can pause, read the text, and that will give you a sense of what these cards do. And the player who controls planning, the planning region in Guy's brain, also gets a card when they control that region. Look how cute it is. And again, there are the game effects that will give you these cards. You play them whenever the effect applies as described by the card itself, and they can be quite powerful. So first, again, each turn, prosecutor chooses a card that determines the effects that will be in play. Each player gets to place a token. We check for the majority of the area involved in the card. We resolve that effect based on the decision of the player who controls the area, and then, surprise, we flip here, and more things will happen, and even the prosecutor is not allowed to look at the side of the card before it's selected. And then, again, the player that controls the area involved here will resolve the action indicated there. I'll show you another card just to give you a sense. Again, you can pause, read, and you'll get a sense of the prosecutor may get an effect automatically. The player who controls that area gets to choose how to resolve that effect. And then again, the player who controls that area will get to make another decision here with possible effects. So what you're really trying to do, again, of course, is to pursue your objectives. In a situation of limited knowledge. You don't know exactly what things are gonna do, but probably you'll get a sense. And ultimately, you're placing these tokens and pushing them, resolving those effects. Ultimately, again, to manipulate what tokens go here. After a while, there will be, again, some tokens that are visible, so you get a sense. The logical people are gonna, there's no way, they don't have enough actions effects to really affect that. But here there is a stack of things that are happening, and maybe I'm gonna use an effect to look at them, to see where things are going. Again, ultimately you have imperfect thematic information that you're trying to use to generate game effects that are actual, like is the number of tokens there, is the number of tokens in a certain area, is the value total there. So you have an interesting way in which theme and hard math interact here. So it is a fun, simple game in its most basic configuration, and it feels like a party game. It really is ultimate. It feels like Bang, again, with that secret role element that, however, only works really for the first round or two. Pretty soon, early on, you'll get a sense. Okay, look, we got three voices in the head. I know that I am the innocent guy because that's my card. I looked at it, and there's another player who just made a selection that was really damning for Guy, and so now I know that's the guilty person, and the other person probably is the doubtful person. So the magic of the secret roles disappears early on, but the fun of just interacting with this crazy, wacky, whimsical situation. That remains. One of the most fun things that I found is indeed to sort of role play the voices and to pretend that you're trying to be smart, like, oh, I'm gonna choose that action because everybody knows you are the innocent guy, but you're gonna say, oh, I said that action because it just seems, and then you make up a reason while everybody knows it's totally made up. I found that role playing a secret role when it's obvious, which is earlier in the game, somehow it's funny. It's just ridiculous. I think the game is really enjoyable if you embrace the ridiculousness of the situation and you look at your board, you look at your pushing tokens through a guy's brain. I think that's not hard to do. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed it as a light, wacky, whimsical party game. I think it works very well that way. I think that some of the elements that are added to the design to try to make it look more strategic, in truth, they don't add much. If anything, they just add extra step to just enjoy the strangeness and ridiculousness and try to guess what different thematic things are gonna do. Just enjoy how ridiculous some of the things the guy does are. I think that's the most fun. You engage with it as almost like not as a legal thriller at all, but as a legal comedy. That's fun. To me, that's the game that you enjoy for the theme, for the crazy social interactions, for the weird jokes that you make based on the situations created by the cards. And that's worked very well with when we played the basic game. Then when we played the game with the extra actions, that is, with the extra effects granted by the icons, so I can play a token to destroy your thing, I can play another token to move things around. To me, that didn't really add much. Oh, I can use actions to look at these tokens and they're in the right, and I remember the order, so I remember you place this token here, so I'm gonna look at this one to try to figure out your role. But then I'm gonna shuffle it so people don't know what my role might be. All of these things there, these deduction elements, are kind of silly when you get a lot more information simply by seeing what actions people choose here. So those deduction elements that are there, it looks like there is a deduction element, but it's really silly when it's obvious based on the choices people make here. It looks like you have almost like a Eurogame element when you're using those effects to maximize things. But then people are gonna do so many things to affect the things that happen on the board, then I don't get a sense that trying to maximize the effects really does much, other than, using the numbers, that makes sense, but trying to maximize effects and icons and numbers, I felt that there was enough chaos that the Eurogame element based on using effects related to the icons, I didn't feel that added much. So I think there are elements in which the game tries to look more serious and strategic than it actually can possibly be, and I feel those elements don't add much. They don't weaken the experience much, but I felt like the strategic advanced game wasn't any different really than the basic game, but it just had more steps. It added more steps, so again, what is the fun of what is enjoyable, the fun of playing this game. So voices in my head, in conclusion, this is a very unusual, very unique game that feels mainly like a party game and is enjoyable, at least for me, at least for my group. It has been enjoyable for its party elements. I don't think the strategic elements are particularly necessary, but again, they are optional. And mind you, if you watch this video, it's like, oh my gosh, this is like the new Ark Nova. I'm gonna play it as a heavy Euro game, really enjoying the icons and the effects. Good for you, I'm glad you enjoyed that way. It's not the way I find it enjoyable, but again, it's good that, we have different people playing games for different reasons, and there's something for everybody out there. Voices in my head, very unique game, very strange theme, another unexpected game from a publisher that really is earning its name.